Recording. Okay, John 14:15 to the end of the chapter, please.
If you love me, keep my commands, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to help you and be with you forever, the Spirit of truth. The world cannot accept him because it neither sees him nor knows him. But you know him, for he lives with you and will be in you. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. Before long, the world will not see me anymore, but you will see me because I live. You also will live. On that day, you will realize that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. Whoever has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me. The one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love them and show myself to them. Then Judas, not Judas Iscariot, said, "But Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world?" Jesus replied, "Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me. All this I have spoken while still with you. But the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give it to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. You heard me say, I am going away and I am coming back to you. If you loved me, you would be glad that I am going to the Father. For the Father is greater than I. I have told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe. I will not say much more to you, for the prince of this world is coming. He has no hold over me, but he comes so that the world may learn that I love the Father and do exactly what my Father has commanded me. Come now, let us leave.
All right. There's Alan. Good to see you, Alan. We were talking about you. All right.
I had to reboot my computer. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay. So yeah. Welcome again to all of you who could be doing any number of things right now, but who will, for some reason, sit here for an hour or so every Tuesday night in the off chance that you might hear something good about your God and you don't want to miss it. Dear me. Dear me. Maybe too often. Maybe we talk about God's love for us a little bit too much. How could that be possible? Well, that could be possible if, whilst speaking about God's love for us, we neglect to mention our love for God, but more so how God feels, what God thinks about our love for Him, and how rare humanity's love for God is, and how special that is, and that if He's any Father at all, must be delighted when His children respond to His love with their own love. So, before we get fully going, if I can figure out this screen sharing thing, there's something I need you to hear. Because of all the songs ever written and ever sung, no one has ever expressed the joy of being loved more than Jackie Wilson. And as most love songs speak about how much the songwriter loves loving someone else, listening to this song, it's clear that the writer wanted to capture the joy of being loved. And so when I play this, I want you to listen to the song. You'll already know it, so that won't take up much of your attention. And so I want you to listen to the backing, because not only did the songwriter get it, and not only did Jackie get it, but it's clearly evident that the producer understood the message of this song, made evident in the backing. So as you listen to the song, listen also to the backing vocals, the brass and the strings, and in particular what they're playing. And most of all, and this is the funniest part of the song, which solidifies everything that I'm saying to you, listen to the last 5 notes of triumph. All right, let me see if I can figure out how to share this. Screen share. I think if I do that, then I can bring up that. Can you all see that? All right. All right.
Looking good, looking good.
All right, here we go. Enjoy.
Someone to care, someone to share, lonely hours and the moments of despair, to be loved, oh, what a feeling to be loved.
The backing.
Someone to kiss, someone to miss, when you're away, to hear from me today, to be loved, oh, what a feeling to be loved. Some wish to be a king or a queen, some wish for fortune and fame, but to be truly loved is more than all of these things. Oh, someone to kiss, someone to miss, when you're away, to hear from me today, to be loved, oh, what a feeling to be loved, to be loved, oh, what a feeling to be
Ah,
You hear that little at the end? Triumph! The whole song, even the backing vocals that come in and emphasize, absolutely abundantly clear that everybody in the studio that day understood precisely the message of that song. And that's a rare message. As I said, a lot of songs, indeed the majority of love songs, the vast bulk of them, speak about loving. I love this song because it speaks about being loved, and does so with all the joy that any man could ever hope to express. To love is a wonderful thing. To be loved is beyond wonder. More often than not, we can't even love ourselves. So to imagine that someone else is capable of loving us, especially those who know the full depth of us, our faults and our failings, some of these people we've even hurt, and they still love us. He couldn't shake them. A couple of sticks of dynamite wouldn't get them off your tail. They've made up their mind. They're going to love you. How marvelous that these people exist who, through their love for us, speak God into our lives solely by their persistent, incessant, stubborn insistence upon loving us, often in spite of us. And beyond that, even possessing the courage to go the full distance with love that'll hold us to account, that'll expect and demand and challenge us, even rebuke us when necessary. Oh, what a feeling to be loved. Well, surely it wouldn't be too much to speculate that given that we are made in His image, that God also feels this way about those who would dare to love Him. A hidden face. A hidden face is no sign of a forgetful heart. I preached a lesson one time, preached it quite a lot because I enjoyed it. And it seemed to help people. On Psalm 13, when the first two verses, David goes to God, how long? How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts, every day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Is questioning God that he can't see, who's not there, who isn't tangible, who's not visible. How long? And then from questioning God in the first two verses, the next two verses, David starts to call upon God. Look on me and answer, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. My enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. And then the final two verses of triumph, where David seems to be holding himself to account, seems to be reminding him, but I trust in your unfailing love. It's almost as though David's grabbing himself. Wait a minute, what are you talking about? You're a truster. Get yourself together, man. That's not you. You're not a questioner. You're not a doubter. You're a lover. You're a truster. David says, but I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord. And in the original manuscript that David wrote, will was bolded, italicized, and underlined. Trust me. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me. David learns that a hidden face is no sign of a forgetful heart. Every parent who drops their kid off at college or watches them as they spread their wings and leave home reminds their children with every ounce of their being, just because we're no longer with you physically does not mean that we are absent from you. We are with you in every other way imaginable. A hidden face is no sign of a forgetful heart. And in the context of what's happening in our text, we have Judas who has entered out into the darkness. This is followed by Jesus announcing to them that he's leaving them, and this troubles their hearts. Jesus responds by telling them to still their troubled hearts. And then again does it in this verse. We saw he said it last week. He says it again. And now goes on to supply some of the reasons why their hearts should not be troubled. Now, he's going to tell them that there's a time coming shortly when what he's saying to them will make sense to them, that they'll finally understand the uniqueness of the relationship contained within the oneness of himself and the Father. And he assures them that they are not being abandoned. They are not being orphaned. God doesn't orphan his children. I'm not leaving. You're not being left alone. I will come to you, he says, no doubt in reference to the Spirit, but also in what he says in regard to the commandments, and also in their love for God and in their love for each other. All of these things will be assurances to them that they have not been abandoned and that Jesus is still with them, albeit in a different type of way. But a hidden face is no sign of a forgetful heart. That he addresses this, preparing them for his departure, is a clear indication of the love that exists between them. Because if they didn't care about Jesus, if they wouldn't miss him, if they weren't about to mourn his departure, then there would be no need for any of this speech. No need for this preemptive preparation for his departure. One of my dad's favorite sayings was, "You never miss the water till the well runs dry." I thought it was particularly wise when he said it. And through the years, I considered it in many various ways that it might be true and how it might be applied, and consistently saw the wisdom of what it was he was saying. Appreciate what you got right now. Strangely enough, I never for a second considered that it would apply to him, that I would miss him when his well ran dry and he was the water that was no longer there. I dropped Billy's brother Ian off at the shops while I went and checked in on my dad that day, and he was lying on the floor when I found him, and it took a second or two to register what had happened and that he was gone. And I had just left Ian, and I told Ian I was going back to get him. So I had to leave him to go get Ian and then go back home and phone the rest of my family. Phones at that time were still isolated in houses. But to do that, I had to drive back down to the shops, and I barely remember trying to hold it together so that I could drive. And I found Ian, and I told him. And I can't remember if I told Ian or he just assumed, but he drove. He drove me home so that I could call and let them know. But in that 5-minute drive from the shops to my house, I vividly remember losing it and beating the dashboard of the car to within an inch of its life, with no shortage of tears or volume. I didn't think it was possible for loss to be so profound. For grief to be so immediate, or pain to be so sharp and consistent, and the depth of it, even now, like a dagger, and it wouldn't leave. There are two other times that are irrelevant, but I think I've been brokenhearted 3 times in my life. Though I've used the phrase as flippantly as everyone else does, I suppose. But others who have experienced a broken heart know exactly what I'm talking about. I used to think it was simply phraseology, a poetic or lyrical term that we'd conjured up to describe loss. I never thought for a second before my dad died that it was actually descriptive, that that's precisely how it felt, that your heart was broke. And there's no better description, no better words can describe it. I remember pulling a hamstring in soccer one day, and I went down as though a sniper had hit me. And I was in the dressing room with my best pal, John. And I'm still rubbing the back of my leg. And John says to me, "I think I pulled a hamstring once." And I said to him, "If you only think you did it, then you haven't. Because when you do it, there's no think about it." And it's the same with heartbreak. If you only think you've been heartbroken, then you haven't yet. And God bless you when it happens. There's no pain compares. So the fact that Jesus is preemptively preparing them for this doesn't only speak of his love for them, it speaks toward the reciprocal type of love that existed between them. And he's trying to spare them. I wouldn't wish heartbreak on my worst enemy. And as I think about leaving my little ones and Sarah, well, I try not to think about it. But when I do think about it, I try and, like I said last week, say things to Will that I hope will ease the pain that I know is coming. And to know he's going to feel what I felt when my dad went, kills me, causes me sincere grief to think about how much pain my departure will cause them. So much so, I genuinely wish that I could die first, because I would rather mourn them than have them suffer this. But let's face it, time's not on my side. I started too late. And time wasn't on Jesus' side either. And it's a beautiful thing to read here what's going on, that he's not only concerned about them being theologically accurate. We read this stuff as though it's been presented in a lecture room somewhere or from a pulpit. It isn't. It's been spoken around a Passover meal, the greatest meal in Israel's history, where family gathered So in loving preparation, he prepares them for the pain that they're about to experience when we're bold and selfless enough to love someone else more than we love ourselves. And then they're gone. And here's my point tonight, and why Jackie Wilson was referenced. It must have been, if this was the Son of Man, the genuine Adam, the real human, it must have been of tremendous comfort to Jesus, knowing not simply how much he loved them, but, and perhaps equally as powerful, how much they loved him. The greatest comfort to me when my dad died was not how much I loved him and the sun rose and set with my father, but the comfort was not how much I loved him, but in the knowledge of how he loved me. That the son loved his father and without question obeyed him is not up for grabs here. But it's God's love for the world that drove him to the cross. So to have that love returned, as Jackie demonstrated, what a feeling to be loved, to be loved. When the lover of lovers loves and then receives. We all have people, simply because how much they love us, they would run through walls for us. Not because of how much we love them, though that might be equally true, but because how much they love us. And to see this and to know it, to be loved. I wish I could love anyone as much as Will loves me. It staggers me beyond belief to witness this. That Jesus was about to take on the world at its vilest was not lost on him. He knew what lay ahead. He knew the cost involved. He knew what was at stake. And undoubtedly, it would draw upon every reserve that he had. So it's unquestionable to me that some of the strength necessary to face what Jesus is about to face was supplied to Jesus by those who loved him. Not just his love for them, their love for him. How empowering it is to be loved. And that, if any of that is true, and I'm suggesting that it is, then that still remains true for God today. I don't have to tell you guys that how cold and stagnant religion can often become. Obedience, rules, laws, don't do this, do that. Here's the 5 ways to be happy. Here's the 6 ways to be profitable. Here's the 7 ways to pray. Here's the 9 reasons why. Here's the, we go to church, sing, pray, stand. Everybody knows when to stand, when to sit. You break the order, you're going against the firing squad. And I'm not questioning the necessity or the validity of any of that. But as Jesus' time grows closer, and we're now hours away, his words now would never be so important as they are now. Maybe or maybe not, Jesus said some flippant things along the way, or things that weren't worth recording. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But I guarantee you he wouldn't be saying them now if he ever did. The things that are remembered most when we lose loved ones are the things they said last. You know this. You've been to enough funerals. You've spoke to your children. Well, who saw Daddy last? What did he say? They're of special significance. And knowing this, then he refuses to speak about obedience out with the boundaries of love, or love out with the boundaries of obedience. And notably within the context of their love for him. Love and obedience, inseparable, he wants them to know. Inseparable. Because as you know, that it's possible to love something and give it no obedience. If all we're talking about is affection. And it's also possible to obey something but have no regard or love for them. You do it every day by keeping the speed limit and sending taxes. Obedience without love. Not so in my kingdom, he says. My kingdom is not of this world. It doesn't work the same. It doesn't function the same. And love and obedience are inseparable. Four times in 7 verses, he impresses this upon them. Verse 15, 16, if you love me, you'll obey what I command. Verse 21, whoever has my command obeys them. He's the one who loves me. 2 verses later, if anyone loves me, he'll obey my teaching. And then 1 verse later again in the negative, he who does not love me will not obey my teaching. 4 times in 7 verses, if you preached like that, they'd fire you. You'd think you were senile. We heard you already. Move on. You're repeating yourself, preacher. No one speaks like this who isn't trying to emphatically as they can make a lasting point. Why is the question that must be asked? And it's the most simplest of answers, but it begs to be answered. Why is he speaking like this? Why is he preparing them? Why is he being so emphatic about love and obedience and what it all means? Because he wants to see them again. And their love for him, not only his love for them, their love for him plays a huge part in this. This isn't called doctrinal theology he's given them. He's preparing them for what lies ahead, and he doesn't want to lose them. We must guard against reading Christ and reading his departure in the form that we're often tempted to read. Much of Jesus' instruction, cold, emotionless lecturing, teaching, as though he's some kind of unattached professor, simply there to pass on some information and go home. All right, boys, I'm here. Here's the rules. Have at it. And as he parted, or as he's parting, no doubt, as we all do when someone we love passes, no doubt they'd have been talking to each other, remembering him, sharing stories, particularly about some of the last things he said and done, not only because they would have been freshest in memory, but because they would realize if he knew he was going, then what he would be saying at the end would be of ultimate importance. He would not want to have said the most important stuff 3 years ago and then bury it under an avalanche of trivialities. They'd be talking, well, who saw him? Well, we saw him. Where did you see him? In the upper room. What did he say? What did he say? What did he say? And as they rehearsed this thing that is so naturally human when we lose someone, what would they have been remembering? Love, obey, love, obey, love, obey. They're inseparable. And it's not because he wants them to be theologically correct. It's because he wants them saved. He loves them and wants to see them again. And he's telling them, not as cold theological instruction, but in a context that they have to consider that when they see these things, that they are evidence that he's still with them. And if Jesus gives this type of advice, love and obey, love and obey, love and obey, at a time so critical as this, we must assume it's powerful. We must assume it's important, of critical nature. But also, we must assume it works. He's telling us to do it because it works. He's not giving them this advice so that they can pass an exam. He's giving it to them as a doctor prescribes medicine, as a father teaches his son a trade, as a mother demonstrates the tender depths of her love to her offspring, because they work. I'm not telling you it is some kind of passing comment or quirky line or some worldly wisdom I've picked up. I'm telling you because it works. When the storms rage, love and obey. When the world bares its teeth at you, love and obey. When it robs you of your most prized possessions, love and obey. And when the grave itself opens its jaws to take from us that which we love the most, love and obey, not because it's documentally accurate, but because it works. He's not telling you so that you can pass an exam. He's telling you because he wants to see you again. Don't let your hearts be troubled, boys. I'm not leaving you. And you will know this. And here's how you will know it. Because it will be ceaselessly evidenced in your presence by people loving and being loved according to the commands of my Father. You will see the love and obedience, and when you see it, you will know I am present. This you must view as evidence that I have not abandoned you. Your Father does not orphan his children. Maybe we speak about our desire to be with God a little bit too much. Maybe we speak about our side of the deal too often. Maybe we speak about reward and heavenly experiences to the point whereby we forget an essential part of it all. God wants to see you. And the instruction that he's given you is not to be carried out in some cold religious ceremony. It's to be carried out because your Father loves you and he wants you. And so he's given you what works. When James later on says true religion is this, orphans and widows, he hasn't plucked orphans out of the sky. He's remembering what God is like. God does not orphan children. You want to be like God? Unorphan a child. And so saying this tonight to make the point that God doesn't simply love you, he loves that you love him. As much as you love those who love you. And that you do it in a world that is so set against you. In a world where the odds are stacked against you. That you have to do it on a road where the wind and the hail of sin are blowing your coat off. A world that incessantly tries to raise a standard of lies against his truth. That you're doing this in a world that has no regard for him and often despises him. That you do it having to walk upstream and against the tide. Is it any wonder that Christ might have walked that final mile singing, "To be loved, to be loved, oh, what a feeling to be loved." How can you do this, Jesus? They've removed your back, they've beat you to a pulp, and you're still going. How can you do it? And he would have looked at all of you and said, "Are you kidding? Look at them. They love me. There's not a chance in the world I will let them down. And I love them, not just because I love them and that I've chosen to love them, but I love them because they love me." If Satan ever came to God and pointed to you, pointed to the church and said, "What do you think these... Look at them. There's not a piece of them hanging the right way. You think these people are great? You think they're good?" What would God say? God would say, "No, no, that's not it at all. It's that they think I'm good. It's that they think I'm great. They trust me in this world. In spite of it all, against it all, they trust me." If he's any father at all, then he spins like a ballerina when you love him. And because you love him, even your sinfulness, look at that, consider that for a minute. Even the things that shame you most, that would make you want to bury your head in the soil for the rest of your life. Those dark, dark things that you wish weren't true. You even love God in spite of those being existent in your life. It's not only God that we can't shake off. He's like a rabid dog chasing us along the road. But some of you, I see it. Some of you, Satan appeared overnight and tried personally. There's nothing he can do. You've already said no to him. God loves that. And even although you fall and stumble and wail and cry and mourn and shame, even that's not enough to convince you to leave him. And you don't think that's pleasing to him? Thoughts, comments, questions? You're all muted, remember. And after last week, I promised myself I wouldn't shout. I didn't think I would scream. But Billy told me off, and so I thought I'd be pleasing to Billy this week. But
it's the lover's privilege, Billy. I mean, for sure. And the other thing is, you stood by me in my trials. I counted on you. I mean, he was a human being. I mean, just as dependent upon them as they were to him. I mean, really. The other one is the love being the cure for our emotional ills. That's absolutely true. And blessed are you if you do these things.
all right.
And that's the privilege, Billy, yeah?
Yes.
It is. It's not a burden. when we do these things, that we're getting blessed in return, and then we give it away. We're not doing it. We're not just taking it in. You've seen the Dead Sea. It just takes in. Water comes in, doesn't go anywhere. So we don't have to work too hard at it. It just flows out of us. There's an old thing that Charles Hodge said one time. He said, Christianity is intake, not output.
Okay.
And the more you take in, the more you put out. And we take in to put out.
Yeah.
Like, we don't mind putting out. We want to put it out. So, yeah.
Yeah, you know, the old cliche, hey mom, do we have to go to church? No, you get to go to church.
Man.
Forgetting the astounding blessing that has been bestowed, that we have been allowed, that we have been permitted to gather and praise God. That we have
Unbelievable.
That we have been permitted to love Him. That
Unbelievable.
that He hasn't thrown the divine hissy fit that He has every right to do and wipe us off the face of the earth. And not only has He not wiped us off the face of the earth, but welcomes us to love Him. That we are allowed to love Him.
Well, I thought I knew what love was. I had the definition. And so because I had that, I just moved on. What a mistake.
Well, yeah. No man can define love until they've defined God, and that's not coming anytime soon.
Frank had me read 1 Corinthians 13. And and he said, every time the word appears, a love does this, love does that. Put God's name there.
Right.
God is love. God is patient. God is fantastic way to read that. And it's very enriching, Billy. You've probably done
it. Yeah. Anybody else?
I have two things that come to mind.
Okay, Don.
First of all, many of us will be orphans while we're here on earth. But once we get to heaven, we will never, ever be an orphan again. And the second thing is I heard some lyrics to a song not too long ago that said, I wish that I had known that the last time I said goodbye would be the last time I said goodbye. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I really lucked out with my father. The last time I saw my dad never hugged. He wasn't a hugger, and so I wouldn't so I didn't hug him either. It was just a given. And I never doubted his love, never. But it just was never expressed in that way. And strangely enough, he was going on vacation for a few days to an island just off the coast of Scotland, and I wouldn't see him for a few days. And for some inexplicable reason, as I walked out the door, it came to mind to hug him. And I turned around, I can still see myself doing it, turned around and walked back up the hall and gave him a hug.
Awesome.
And so
you can learn to do that. You can learn to hug.
I really lucked out that was my last living memory of the man I've loved most in this world. Yeah. But your point is taken, Don, that could happen at any given moment, ought to sober us into treating the ones we love the most a little bit better, a little kinder, a little sweeter. I've listened to people talk about, like only last week I was watching a video on Columbine where one of the brothers who had lost his sister in that tragedy. The last thing he did to his sister was argue the morning of school, and argued as they left each other, and that's his lasting memory. Yeah.
That's raw.
Yeah, that's hard. And no doubt he comforts himself now that he's older. He realizes, well, that's what siblings do, and you know, it has to be understood within a full context of a life that they obviously laughed and loved each other. But your point is still well taken, Don. We would rather have the best memories possible than regrets. Trust me, I know about regret.
Hey, Billy, as we get older, is it possible to better contextualize? Because we've been around longer than, let's say, a young person.
Well, yeah, no doubt. No doubt. In fact, Joanne and Ken and I were talking about this very thing this afternoon, about things that we hear about our ability or our need to take in wider context of what's happening and what's being said. And the older we get, probably because we keep opening our mouths and someone says, that's not what they said at all. And then we're made look like an idiot for believing it. So we become a little bit more cautious as time goes on.
Fair enough.
And give people more benefit of the doubt. Well, let's see if that is really what he said, and let's see if that's really how he said it, and let's see if that's really what he meant when he said it, before we'll jump off the deep end and believe someone who otherwise has a different agenda and has every reason in the world to, you know, slander whoever it is they're talking about. So I think with wisdom comes that little bit of eagerness to contextualize things. Someone once said, I think I said it last week, context isn't everything, it's the only thing.
Joe, are you going to say something?
Yeah. My parents were missionaries in West Africa when I was a kid, and I lived. And I can't tell you how many times I heard this text used, John 14:15. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. It was part of I don't know what term to use, a presentation of the gospel. It was an algorithm. You may have heard it. It was a in Christ, out of Christ presentation of the gospel.
Cold religious formula.
It was a formula, yes. And, I saw hundreds, thousands, literally, of people brought to Jesus using this method. And I'm not wanting to criticize that, but this really, Your presence and your presentation tonight was very humbling.
Yes, it was.
It was for me too. And going on what Kevin said, when I contextualized what it was he was saying, where he was saying it, who he was saying it to, how long he had left to go. Sadly, too many still use individual and isolate the scriptures as though they stand alone outside of context, and present the human family with formulas as though we're trying to please an engineer. 2 + 2 = this, or a physicist, or get the right formula in the right order. That's all he's interested in. And so when I started,
why is that? Billy, why is that?
I think because it's easier, Roger. Path of least resistance. Judge Judy always said follow the money. I say follow the ease.
Yeah.
Right. Because it seems that putting in the context that you put it in tonight, that message is much more powerful to the people who are hearing it, because we've always heard it as almost like a dispassionate discussion between Jesus and the disciples, and to put it in a very humanistic way like you did tonight is much more powerful, much more impactful in terms of the true message that Christ brought. And it just seems weird that it would be so dispassionate, represented so dispassionately.
Well, that's only true, Roger. That's only true if whoever is hearing it is already committed to giving God their heart as well as their obedience.
Yeah.
To those who only want to give God obedience, that message wouldn't be welcome because it makes demands on them that cold formula doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Brokenness and openness and vulnerability. And vulnerability is not a popular idea.
Yeah.
But Jesus, in weakness, it was the weakness of God that was displayed publicly, Billy,
Right.
before the world. And to understand God and to see it, Frank is the person that loved me. And there are some times I told him, I want to walk away. I'm tired of this stuff. And he never once gave up. And he was absolutely consistent and patient. And he says, if you want to know what it is, you need to experience what it is to be loved by somebody else. And you nailed it. You're take a lifetime just to write it down. How could you describe that?
Yeah. And if you
It's
look,
very complex.
You have to,
We're trying to give easy answers to very, very complex. Humans, beings themselves are very complex.
well, look at
And there is no easy way.
look at the world around us.
Yeah.
All the major religions have done the same thing. They're formulaic. Yeah, the formulized because it's easy. A plus B equals 1 plus 2 equals, here's how to do it. And even today, even with the most important things we have on the planet, like our marriages, even if you go to marriage counselors, more often than not, they do the same thing. A date plus a kiss on the cheek plus a daily reminder saying I love you equals a strong marriage. They formalize the whole thing. It's what we do. They do it in the world of finance. You want to be rich? Okay, here's what it takes. Put away this amount of money. Invest this amount of money. Do this kind of thing.
go ahead.
And
That's the new word. That's the new word I want. Frank gave me. Formulaic. I had to write it down. Formulaic.
And it seems to be preferred because maybe it's easy. What?
Where's my computer? I'm gonna listen to it.
I have no idea where your computer is. Why would I know?
Well, Billy, that means that I have to give up control. And I don't want to be dependent on something I don't have control and I've got a grip on.
Well, this means you have to embrace all the dynamics of a relationship, and that's heavy, and it's intricate, and it's involved, and it's constant, and it's ceaseless, and it's demanding, and it's challenging, and it's rebuking. Why on earth would anyone who doesn't genuinely love God want any of that when they can have a John 3:16 plus Acts 2:38 equals you get to heaven?
Well, a relationship would demand more from me than any law could then.
Of course. But maybe the same in a marriage. The same in a marriage. For Pete's sake. If any of us thought it was as easy as kiss at bedtime,
Oh, man.
2 or 3 I love yous throughout the day, 1 date twice a week, sex however many times, this equals I love you. And these people, and I know they mean well, but for Pete's sake. And I know they're up against it. I'm not trying to bring them down. I know they're trying. But they're speaking into lives that have 2 million fibers each coming together to make a single rope.
I got to know Jim McGuigan because I was in a group of preterists, and they're hyper preterists. And everything is a formula. There is no, I've known the preacher 40 years, and I don't know any more about him than I did the day I met him. We don't know anything about him. He keeps everything very close to his chest. Here's the 3 things of spiritual life. Do these. There's no Holy Spirit today. That was in the 1st century. We don't have the Spirit. Jesus isn't God. All this stuff. It's just, and it's hard to go. My wife loves the women. So I go and I listen and I get a lecture. And it's just as empty as,
right.
And I love some of the people there, Billy, but I'll tell you, there's nothing I can do about it. Absolutely nothing.
No. But here's what's funnier about it. And going back to your point, Roger, here's what's funny about it. Those of us who have surrendered ourselves to the idea of relationship, this is not something that's to be performed, it's something that's to be lived. Those of us who have surrendered into this 24/7, you're my father, I'm your child, and have come away from rule, regulation, law, blah, blah, blah. If you asked any one of us, do you find it easier now or harder? We'd actually say, oh, it's a lot easier. It just appears harder, but it isn't harder. It's actually easier because then it exists within a framework of relationship and love and forgiveness and patience and kindness and grace and understanding. That's now the God you have, who understands every single fiber in your rope. And that's now what's giving you buoyancy instead of performance to law or legalities. Now, it might cost more, and maybe that's why Jesus spoke about the cost of discipleship scaring people away. So maybe it's not the ease at all, because I think it's actually easier for me to live within the context of relationship than in the context of cold law. But it does cost more. It costs every second of every day. But it's easier.
Yeah.
Because I'm more convinced of his patience and his kindness and his unwillingness. He's not going to abandon me. He's not going to orphan me. Once that gets through my head, once the word Father finally penetrates, and I realize that God has as much chance leaving me as I have of leaving mine, none.
Absolutely.
Then I sit saved, and I don't have to look at the checklists anymore.
It all goes back to who God is.
Right.
That's it. Who God is.
And
it's his faithfulness to us, not our faithfulness to him. But we're not going anywhere with a God like that.
Right.
No way.
And so my job now is only to allow him to extend himself. I have to allow him to impress me more. Because there's no way in my life that I can convince myself that this idiot has got God understood.
No way.
That I've somehow appreciated the size of him. That would be moronic for me to conclude. So therefore I must allow God the opportunity to impress more upon me in all his characteristics and become increasingly enamored by him.
That sounds good to me, Billy. Sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Sign me up. I'm there.
I mean, I know marriage counselors would lose a lot of money, but I can't get it past my head that whenever these couples turn up, and I'm talking within the context of Christianity, of course, but whenever these couples turn up, I don't know why the counselor doesn't just say to them, "Oh, this is easy, guys. You be like Jesus." Tell me something that any marriage guidance counselor could ever say that would be better than that. Or that could work.
Think, Billy, don't you think a good friend is worth more than a psychiatrist? I mean, they could certainly do more for you. Well, I know that to be the case.
Well, that's the reason why they're making so much money. Friendship's rare.
Yeah, as we get older, we have harder time making them.
It must be
I found that to be true.
It must be really sad. I feel really sorry for some of these people.
So do I.
Because I think, dear God, in this whole world, 7.5 billion people, you've got no one to talk to who doesn't understand, and who won't charge you $140 just to listen to you. It's someone that you can call any time of the day or night. Now, granted, you might not always get the best advice in a nice, neatly packaged form that education might be able to teach someone to do, but you don't need it because you've got their phone 24/7 every day of the week.
Absolutely, yeah.
You iron it out. You go fishing with your pal and talk to him about it.
Frankie Lott. Frankie.
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't matter.
Joanne, were you going to say something? Yes, and I hope it's not something silly, but we're talking about marriage, expressing love in marriage being a formula of things to do. And saying I love you and blah and so on. I remember I was back in Pennsylvania visiting my sister, and they were studying a book on marriage and the family. Paul Faulkner is the name that comes to mind. This has been a long time ago. But anyway, so they asked different people, and it may have been, how do you know your spouse loves you or whatever? And something that one lady said really stuck with me. She was saying, my husband rarely says I love you. He's not that expressive type. But I know he loves me because of what he does for me each day.
Right.
It's the way he shows me.
Exactly. There's nothing silly about that at all. Joanne, if someone came to me and asked me that question, how do you know Sarah loves you? It's almost an unanswerable question. It's like, what? What do you mean, how do I know? We've lived with each other for 14 years. How many answers do you want? Get in bed. 14 years of, what do you mean, how do I know? It's evident in a million little ways, in a million different things, in a million different levels, at a million different times. And I know these people mean well, but it's got to get to the heart of the message. And if that's true with us and God, then it's true with us in our marriages. If it's true with the church's marriage to Him, then it's true in our marriages. Nothing is going to work without the heart, without the commitment, without the sincerity and genuine desire to please. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I know they mean well, but sometimes married couples who don't have a problem go to these marriage seminars where people get up and say, here's what a good Christian wife looks like, here's what a good Christian husband looks like, and they go home thinking, I didn't think there was anything wrong with you, Stan, but now that I see what a Christian man should be like.
Man.
So
Yeah,
in essence, sometimes all they're doing is showing Christian marriage porn. They're portraying a standard that no one could ever achieve, and in doing so, they're creating misery. Because life's not that simple, and marriages are not that simple, and they never have been.
Ken wants to say something too.
All right, Ken.
Billy, I can only imagine that most of you were raised in a loving family, mother and father, etc., etc. My mother passed away when I was only 13 months old. I was given to my grandmother to raise, and she raised me until I was 17. I can assume that she loved me, but I never felt it. I've always felt alone. I would go to school, I would see these kids with mothers and fathers, and it hurt. It wasn't until I was in the service and got to Norfolk and was fortunate enough to meet the daughter of a family that actually took me in. And all the years that I was in Norfolk and afterwards, I considered them mom and pop. And I felt love there. And I went to church with them on Sundays, even though they were Catholic. It was church. And it took many, many years for me. I met Jesus really at a Jesus house while I was going to college. And I went through a couple of marriages that never really were marriages. I didn't know how to be a husband. And it wasn't until I met Joanne. We've been married 36, 37 years now, the end of this month. But it's been a blessed marriage. And I'm so thankful for the Lord to bring us together. And we've had quite a number of years now in worshiping with Billy and his family. And even though we're a small congregation, we're a loving family. And
Wow.
I'm 86 now, so I don't have too many more years before I walk with him. But I often think back on the 70 whatever years of loneliness that I had.
Yes.
So I was
Yeah.
with people and around people, and I thought friends were friends, which maybe they were at that time, maybe they weren't, they're not now. So life isn't all rosy, as most of you know. You've had hard spots. Some short periods, some longer periods. But I'm finishing up my life with a very comfortable marriage,
You can't see him over here.
with a relationship with my Lord and with Billy and the little family that I have here in Tucson.
Yeah. Been a long road, eh?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's not that. Life's not that kind. It's not that easy. And further contemplation with what you've said, Roger, it's still not left me. If someone came to me and said, "Prove to me you love God," all right. I go to church. I go to church on Sunday, and they would say, "That proves you love God." Then I'd have to say, "Well, I guess it doesn't." No. I try to be nice to people, and that proves you love God. Well, no, not on its own. I pray. So praying means you love God? No. The essence of it. How do you know your wife loves you? How do you can't. There's nothing tangible about. There's nothing you can put your finger on, and maybe that's it, because we like to put our fingers on things.
Control.
And it rests on faith. Mm-hmm. It's beyond the tangible, beyond the sight, and maybe that's it. We fear the faith. We prefer the tangible. We prefer living by sight.
Yes, absolutely right, Billy.
Maybe that's why
we can't hold it in control.
Yeah,
but it's more difficult to understand.
Yes.
Why she loves me. when all I've been through.
Yeah, but see, if you can water it all down to a few commands and a few laws, then that we can hold. That makes it easy. But the truth is, prove love. Look how big the Bible is.
Goodness.
Cliches don't do it, and the Bible really doesn't explain the human relationship.
No. In fact, the closest we get to it, of course, is the cross that is erected in the middle of the text itself, where God says, "Look, you really want to know who I am? You really want to know what love is?" And he erects a cross and he says, "There, look at that. There it is." Mm. But even that needs unpacked, explained, contextualized, preached about, lectured over, meditated over, thought about, prayed about, in order that we can fully understand exactly what it is. Maybe, I don't know, Roger. Maybe that's why God hates cowards. Because it's for the brave.
No question.
Billy, can I?
Or rather, hates cowardice. That's more accurate. Alan, on you go.
Yeah. Been an amateur songwriter for 30, 40 years. The word love, I think we're way caught up in the world's definition of love.
No doubt.
And we don't really know. I've talked many times with myself about writing love into a song. I hear it every day on songs. Love, I hear love, love. It's usually a definition of sex in today's world. People don't. I was going to write a song one time called "You Can't Make Love." And you can't make love. You can't. That was my whole idea.
That's good.
Yeah,
Very good.
I never finished that, but I thought it was a good idea. Because the world doesn't have any idea about what you just said tonight. They don't understand that love.
No.
I don't know that you can understand that love until you know the Lord. I just don't see the world doesn't, but we've let the world creep into our being in the church too much. We know the letter of the law, but we forget the spirit behind it. That's what we're really talking about. What the Jews were guilty of that, weren't they? They knew the letter of the law up and down. They didn't practice it, the spirit behind it, the intent. What really, why you did these things, why God made the very definition of love. You've helped me understand a little more tonight about, I realize that love's not a word to throw around loosely. I know my wife and I've been married 62 years, and I can tell you a little bit about love. I don't know how she loves me. I don't know.
Well, I tell you, yeah, you're in good company there. But, something that's always haunted me until recently, and I'm reluctant to share it because often we use another man's truth as our get-out clause. So I'm not saying this in order that grace may abound, but I've never been one who prays a lot. And it's always haunted me. I'm never a good prayer. Like Joanne expressed earlier, hey, what's wrong with Frank? And Kevin told Joanne what's wrong with Frank, and Joanne says, that's good. I can modify my prayers now that I know. And I know this about Joanne. She's a prayer. If something comes into my life that I think needs prayer, Joanne's one of the ones that I'll contact because I know that she does it. I've never been too good about it. Look, I know the text, pray without ceasing, yada, yada, yada. Well, look, no one can pray without ceasing, so let's stop that nonsense. We know what he means. Anyway, but it's always haunted me, and I always felt I should pray more, I should talk to God more. And then it was only about, I don't know, a couple of months ago, maybe, I'm sitting there and it dawned on me. And I'm having a conversation with myself. Maybe I shouldn't have shared that. But I'm having a conversation with myself. And so Billy 1 says, you don't talk to God much. And Billy 2 said to Billy 1, so what? You don't talk to anyone much. You don't. And I was like, yeah, I know I don't. He said, well, you don't. You hate small talk. You hate politeness for the sake of politeness. You hate pandering. You hate wasted times. You'll give some of it because life involves, but dwindling your life on trivialities, you've got no time for it. You don't do that with anyone. You don't talk to anyone a lot. So it's not, this isn't reflective of you and God. This is reflective of you. And Sarah will tell you, we don't talk much. But it never, I know it enters her mind because we've spoken about it, but it never enters my mind for a second that lack of conversation means that I love her any less. That's a bizarre concept to me. And Billy's from Ireland, and I don't know if Billy's, I tend to think he is a little bit like that, more so than, but Irish and Scots, we're not the rabbling type. We're not the overly expressive. And so now that we come to these people who say religions like this, marriages, we end up feeling like Ken dolls. All right, just get into this shape and say the right thing. And
yeah.
And so I've been I think I've given myself some grace on that. You don't talk to God a lot, but you don't talk to anybody a lot. Well, that's true. So, which allowed me another step. Well, is then my prayer life reflective of my personality or a lack of love for God? And so I'm left examining my love for God, and I come away thinking, I know it's wrong to do, but I would kill someone who said I didn't love God. That's how fiercely I would defend it. I mean, I know the contradiction in terms. I'm just saying so I know it's not that. There's no doubt in my mind that he's always here and watching and when you drive along the road with a stranger, then every passing second has to be filled with something or you both feel weird.
Mm-hmm.
But with someone that you love, you can drive for hours without saying anything. And you see them look out the window, you know what they're saying. but you also know how much they love it, because, and you might say something, you might not. But the cold, hard, fast, if you love God, you will pray. Here's what prayer sounds like. Here's how it must be done. I hope that's not true, because I've got none of it. But I'll die for my love for God. I've got no doubt about that. I might not look forward to it, but I'll do it.
Well, see, it comes back to that being formulaic.
Yeah. Versus relationship.
Right. The more that you are immersed in the Bible and in His Word, isn't it true that He's speaking to you through that?
Right.
So whether or not your prayer is, I mean.
Oh! You just gave me another out.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm here for.
Because when I'm in the presence. Because when I'm in the,
Roger.
when I'm in the presence of McGuigan, I would rather shut up and listen. So it only makes sense that when I'm in the presence of God, I'd rather look around and shut up and listen. You know, maybe it can be developed a little bit, maybe not 100% out, but you're bang on, Roger. You're bang on. If Will doesn't speak to me as much as I would like him to, then I wouldn't be overly joyed with that. But if I could genuinely understand, hey, that doesn't mean that he loves you any less. He really doesn't. He's just not a talker. Then I'd be fine with it. Because it's not the talk I'm concerned about, it's the love.
Billy, when you say when you're in the presence of McGuigan, you're referring to Billy, right?
Obviously. Look at that cheeky wee face.
He's been quiet the whole time. I want him to say something. I want him to tell the story of Alec polishing their shoes. Big Jim loves to tell that story.
Kevin.
That he showed you love by getting them ready for church every day.
Kevin.
Yay.
Kevin, listen to me, and I'm only going to say this once. Whether it's a Scotsman or an Irishman, when they're not speaking, trust me, you don't want them to speak. They will speak if and when. And Billy's proving my point of the Celts. If Billy wanted to speak, he'd have spoke by now, and maybe he will in 5 minutes when he wants to, but that's the way we are. On one hand, it's like me, I can't shut up, and Billy reprimands me. So he's better at it than me. He's even more stoic than me.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, don't coax words out of a Scotsman or an Irishman at your peril. Because if it comes prematurely, then we haven't thought it through, and God knows what we'll say.
All right. Sounds good.
Sherry, were you going to say something? Did I see you unmute? No? Must have dreamed it. Must have been a dream I had. Oh, here we come.
I thought you said some lovely things, Billy.
Joey, are you leaving?
All right, Joey.
God
See you
bless you,
later.
Joey. Great to see you today. Absolutely. Very encouraging. Thank you.
Sorry for the interruption there, Billy.
I'm going to listen to McGuigan.
I think you said some lovely things tonight, Billy.
Good.
And those things helped me. I loved when you talked about your daddy. And I'd like to hear more. I think we all would, about some memories that you have. I'm not saying tonight. It's getting late for me. and so I thought that was very helpful. I'd like to see that at some point where you'd maybe share some lovely memories of him. I really appreciated Ken. Your name fell away from me, and I got it back. I really appreciated what you shared tonight, Ken. That was very powerful for somebody like me to hear what you said, so on, and thank you for that. Going back to Billy, some of the things you said about your dad just reminded me of what I didn't have. Maybe that's why I connected more to what Ken said. No, that's not true. It's not true. I connected to all the things that was said, almost everything that was said. It made me, what you said, Billy, has made me think a lot, or is making me think a lot, and reflective, of course, as you know. And I think, well, what about the people that can't emotionally connect with God? People that can't emotionally feel God's love, and you touched on some of the things there in the last couple of minutes. What do you say to people like that? Yeah, you've given me a lot to think about, and I'm not, the words aren't, they're somewhere, they're just not coming to my mouth. So, well done, good and faithful servant.
Thank you. I tell you, Billy, I know that about you and your dad, of course, and you know I know. That gives me no pleasure whatsoever, and it gives me quite a bit of grief that someone I love so much didn't have that. That's horrible. Of course, your dad was who he was in Ireland at the time he was in Ireland in that context, and we'll pray God's loving, merciful grace on all of that, and be happy that, you know, his confession reached the stage that it did. But that doesn't give you back what you lost. In that respect, I think it would be fair to say that I started the road in this one segment, that one fiber. I started the road about 5,000 miles ahead of you. And I hate that that's true. Now, there's other areas that you're further away ahead of me, but this one that we're talking about, because I had a father like that I think it gives me a clear advantage in talking about the love and stuff. But I think to summarize in everything, when we're talking about law versus relationship, I think it would be to serve no great purpose if we thought that what we were talking about was law versus emotion. It's not. Emotion's in there, but we must love God in spite of emotion too. It's trust. It's not love versus emotion, or law versus emotion, law versus airy-fairy. It's law versus trust, relationship. And you love your wife whether you feel it or not. She'll love you whether she feels it or not. You love your kids at the same time you want to strangle the living daylights out of them. So I didn't have a lot of emotional thing around my daddy. I'm having a lot of emotional stuff now because I realized that he actually loved me more than I thought he did. Now that I'm big enough to understand the context in which he grew up, a hard city. I thought the city I grew up in was hard. Now I know what it was like when I grew up on the city where they were sandblasting the coal, the soot off the buildings, because that's what everybody breathed every day. And as I look back, I realized they actually loved me more. I just couldn't see it. So there wasn't a lot of emotion. So I'm happy now, not because I can look back and think, oh yeah, I felt that. I'm more happier now because I trust what I've learned is to be true. And I'm only saying these things because I'm getting from your question There's a longing to feel something that you're not always feeling, or feeling as often as other people seem to be saying that they're feeling. I've got a lot to say on that too. I don't think they feel it as often as they'd have us believe they feel it. Or if they do, I'm not too sure how trustworthy it is. Anyway, I know it's part of the package, but it's only part of the package. And trust wins all. Love and trust and obey. Trust and obey, as the song said. Or as Jesus put it, love and obey. Because that works. But you were dealt a bad hand. And that factors into it. I wrote a little post on Facebook this week with regard to plate spinning. Don't worry about it. God counts the plates. God can count. He knows the plates that you've got, and he knows which ones you're spinning, and you know. But that's why this is great, right? Because hopefully someone's got something good to say to you to that. And other times it's me looking to you. I'd be a liar if in raising Will, how to raise Will, how do I raise Will? Billy, you're among some of the men that come to mind. I don't know if you know this. I know I tell you I love you, and I don't need to tell you every day, but you're one of the men I look at. Well, Billy's got good kids. How does he do it? What is he doing? You know, I've called you a couple of times. You're further along that road. I'd be an idiot to ignore it. Especially when it's looking good. I know it's not perfect, but it's looking good.
Wow, that's gallant. That's...
So, it's 9 o'clock. And I did want to finish by saying to all of you, on behalf of myself and my family, thank you for loving such a broken individual and seeing past what is offensive within me. And loving me. Thank you for loving me, because to be loved, oh, what a feeling to be loved. Your father spins like a ballerina tonight because he knows that's true of you. God richly bless you and grant you peace in your believing.
God bless you, brother.
See you next week, God enabling.
Well, peace to all.
Bill.
Excellent.
Good night, all.
Good night.